We all remember the famous line toward the end of the movie, The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy clicks her heels 3 times and says in a dreamlike trance, "There's no place like home. There's no place like home." When I was a kid, I'm not sure I understood why Dorothy wanted to go home. After all, she landed in a pretty cool place, Oz. After all, there's lollipops, fancy horses, fun people, singing, dancing, and everything's in Technicolor, unlike Kansas, which was black and white. She had killed both of the wicked witches by the end of the movie, so the danger was gone. Why did she want to go back home? I think the answer is that for all the splendor of Oz, Dorothy felt out of place. She was twice as tall as her Munchkin friends. Lions, scarecrows, and tin men actually talked in this place. Customs and beliefs were really bizarre. "We're not in Kansas anymore," Dorothy said to her dog Toto at the beginning of the movie. Oz is a nice place to visit, dazzling even, and Dorothy has made friends among its residents. But ultimately, she still feels more comfortable living at home in a community of people whose beliefs and practices she grew up with and understands. In this morning's Torah portion, however, we read a different perspective. This week we read about Abraham, the very first Jew. Abraham is 75 years old, the Bible tells us, when he starts out on a journey leaving home, never to come back again. God calls upon Abraham to leave his father's home and go to a place that God will show him. God doesn't even tell Abraham what or where the goal of this journey will be. He just tells Abraham to go. And along the way, God will guide him and make sure he gets to the right place. In exchange for Abraham having faith in God's mission, God promises that he will make Abraham's descendants into a great nation, and he will bless Abraham and his offspring. And God will make Abraham's name great, and all the families of the earth will be blessed by Abraham. A natural question to ask is, why Abraham? The Torah doesn't tell us very much about Abraham at this point. Later, we're going to learn that he has a very powerful instinct for justice, to the point that he will even challenge God to be just and fair with respect to the wicked cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Later, we will learn that Abraham has unquestioning faith in God, to the point that he's willing to sacrifice his son Isaac, just because God told him to. Later, we'll learn that Abraham is perhaps a charismatic figure, an astute leader, and a formidable warrior. He's able to galvanize an army along with his neighbors to attack the armies of several invading kings who have captured Abraham's nephew, Lot. All of these qualities could point to why God chose Abraham for this special mission, but we don't read about them until much later in the story. So why choose Abraham? Our ancestors asked this very question centuries and centuries ago, and they explained that in Abraham's time, the rest of the world worshipped idols made of clay and wood. The people believed in many gods, and these gods behaved like petulant human beings. People believed that all of creation was an accident, the chaotic result of warring deities. And somehow, in this crazy type of world, Abraham woke up one morning and concluded that everybody else was wrong. Abraham concluded that there's only one creator God. Abraham concluded that this God had a plan when he created the universe. Abraham insisted that our world is not an accident. In fact, God had taken the chaos of a formless void and made order out of it. Abraham concluded that this God had no shape himself, so worshiping idols that are shaped to look like creatures of nature, whether human or animal or vegetation, was nonsense. And most importantly, Abraham insisted that we mere mortals could yet have a relationship with this God if only we opened our hearts, our souls, and our minds to hear God's voice calling to us. And what does God want from us? Well, Abraham may well have believed that all God wants is what a later prophet named Micah said, only to do justice, to love goodness, and to walk modestly with your God. These basic convictions about God, the universe, and what God expects from humanity, our ancestors tell us were the reasons that God chose Abraham to start a new religion, a religion not seen before on earth, a monotheistic religion that became Judaism. Having come to these conclusions on his own, Abraham soon realized that he had to leave home. Unlike Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, Abraham's beliefs and practices were no longer compatible with his kinfolk, his neighbors, his companions. He was no longer comfortable living among them, and he had to leave and find his own way. And that is why God came to him and said, "Leave your father's home and go to a place that I will show you." As you know, I have been coordinating and teaching our conversion program here at Beth Yeshurun for over 20 years. This year we have around 50 people who want to learn more about Jewish beliefs and the Jewish way of life and to join our people. Some people ask me if converts join the program because they want to marry a Jew. And my answer is no. I have met with every single one of the people in our program, and that is not the reason that they want to convert. Times have changed. These days, if a Jew and a non-Jew wish to get married, they just get married. There's no need to convert in order to get married in today's world. It is true that many of these people in the program have met Jews. Maybe they're planning to marry one, or maybe they've already married one. Or perhaps Jewish people they know are just good friends. But the reason they want to convert is because they see our religion with fresh eyes, and they like what they see. Many of you have heard several of them speak at our Yom Kippur services over the past 16 years. They are truly inspiring in their commitment to our faith and traditions. Some people come to our conversion program because they were not raised with any religion that when they were growing up. Some were raised in a religion that they decide they no longer understand or that has no meaning for them as adults. In their search for a religion that makes sense, that emphasizes good works and morality in this world, and that has a straightforward belief in only one God, and has rituals of beauty and meaning, and creates a warm and inviting community, they find Judaism, and they have found a new home. Like Abraham, the first Jew, they have heard God's voice calling to them to leave behind the spiritual world that they grew up in and make a journey to a new religious universe. Like Abraham, they may not be sure where exactly they will end up, but they have faith and trust in God that they will arrive at the promised land in Judaism. That journey takes tremendous faith and tremendous courage, and I marvel at their enthusiasm. Maimonides, the great doctor, philosopher, and Jewish scholar of the 12th century, was once asked a question by a convert to Judaism. It seems that this convert had gotten into an argument with one of his Jewish teachers about a matter of Jewish law. And this teacher not only told the convert that he was wrong, but apparently berated and humiliated him as well. The convert then wrote to the great authority of his age, Maimonides, to find out if he was right or wrong. And Maimonides, never one to mince words, wrote back the following: "Was he, your teacher, intoxicated that he forgot the 33 passages in which the Torah commands us concerning strangers? These passages command us to love and care for the stranger, because we were strangers in the land of Egypt. For even if he had been right and you were in error, it was his duty to be gentle. How much more when you were right and he was wrong? And how great is the duty which the law imposes on us with regard to proselytes? We're commanded to honor and to fear our parents. We're ordered to hearken to the prophets. A man can honor and fear and obey without loving. But in the case of strangers, we are bidden to love with the whole force of our heart. And he called you a fool? Astounding. A man who left father and mother, forsook his birthplace, his country, its power, attached himself to this lowly people, recognized the truth and righteousness of this people's law, and cast the other things of this world from his heart? Shall such a person be called a fool? God forbid. Not witless but wise has God called your name. You, disciple of our father Abraham, who also left his father and his kindred and inclined Godward. And he who blessed Abraham will bless you and will make you worthy to behold all the consolations destined for Israel. And in all the good that God will do for us, he will do for you, for God has promised good to Israel. In Jewish law, a convert to Judaism is considered a Jew in all respects. We are commanded, as Maimonides wrote, to welcome converts into our midst and to treat them with the utmost respect and admiration. I am saddened and even angry sometimes, most of the time, when I occasionally hear that a Jewish person has done otherwise. Perhaps those among us who are sometimes suspicious of converts are really wondering why the heck anyone would want to convert to Judaism. Like Dorothy at the beginning of The Wizard of Oz, we too may sometimes look at the rest of the world with envy. Perhaps we sometimes imagine it would be nice to live in the big, wide, technicolor world without the restrictions and label of living a Jewish life. It would be nice to live a life without encountering anti-Semitism directed at us, without feeling that punch to the gut when reading about anti-Semitic acts and statements in newspapers. Perhaps our world seems too mundane, cast in black and white like Dorothy's hometown. But I would suggest that is simply because we take the wonder and beauty of Judaism for granted. We forget all the richness of our traditions and holidays and life cycle celebrations, the wealth of wisdom and scholarship of our sages, philosophers, and intellects. We should remember the end of the movie. Dorothy, in the end, is not dazzled by the trappings of Oz, or perhaps she is in some ways, but she recognizes that it's not her home. The customs, practice, and beliefs of the inhabitants of Oz are too strange for her. They lack the comfort and familiarity. They lack the common sense and camaraderie of Kansas. And what of Abraham, that first Jew? If he is a role model for people who are on the road to conversion, taking a spiritual journey like Abraham did, should he not also be a role model for us? I think he can and he should be. First, because in our modern world, every one of us is really a Jew by choice. In a free society, no one is forcing us to maintain our faith and traditions. Like our ancestor Abraham, we can choose to hear God's voice and continue the journey that Abraham started. We too can be inspired by the traditions and wisdom of our ancestors and choose to see the Jewish world in technicolor, as Jews by choice do all the time. But there's a second way that Abraham can be a model for us. Later in his life, after he has settled in the Promised Land, our tradition teaches us that Abraham opened the doors of his tent, his home, in all directions, so that he could be sure to welcome the stranger from whatever direction they were coming into his home. Judaism is our home. And as Dorothy said, there is no place like home. We are home now in our faith and among our people. But now it is our duty to welcome those who wish to join us in our home, the strangers in our midst, who are truly the children of Abraham. Shabbat Shalom.